Can I introduce the game first?
Please do. Please do. I got some thoughts, Ari. I got some thoughts.
He's ready. He's ready to go.
Texas. Texas. Laying 16.5 against Kansas. Kansas has one of the best quarterbacks in college football and certainly one of the most fun to watch in Jalon Daniels. It's at home in Austin, laying 3 scores. Dave, let's see what you got up your sleeve this week here. This ought to be
so
good.
Here's my deal with Texas. Again, I have been consistent in saying I respect Texas. I just don't trust them. And I think I was doing some soul searching this morning, Ari. I was trying to decide, why is it? And it's not just the pass. The pass is part of it. But I think part of it is when you look at the teams that everybody does trust from week to week, and you say it might be misplaced trust, whatever. Like, okay, Ohio State, Clemson in their heyday, the Alabama, Georgia, the teams that everybody, when they lose, people are shocked. When Texas loses, people laugh, right? I think a lot of it is because when you look at this Texas team, neither side of the ball just overwhelms you. You know, you don't look at the offense and be like, I don't know how teams are going to stop that offense. Or you look at the defense. You look at the way Georgia's played defense last year, or Alabama when they had Tua and the receivers. People don't just say, oh, I don't know how people are going to score on this Texas defense. Nobody says that. I think they're really above average on both sides of the ball. But I think that might be part of it, is that there's neither side of the ball that you look at this Texas team and you're just like, oh my gosh, like that. That's why I think a lot of it goes to for me. Maybe Ari, you feel differently about one of those two sides of the ball, but I think Kansas is just a good team. I don't love the idea of Kansas going into Austin and winning this game, but they can definitely push Texas. I think Texas is still being overvalued. I don't think people are aware of how bad Baylor might be this year.
Including you last week going into the game?
Including me last week going into the game.
When you picked them to cover? Yeah.
Well, listen, I was thinking about Baylor playing that Utah game and thinking, hey, maybe this Baylor team's a little spunky. I think that Baylor team might be bad. And that Baylor team, again, without Blake Shapen, it is what it is. But Kansas covers this game, and I might push Texas. We'll see. They're no Wyoming, but Kansas can play.
Have you ever played the game Twister?
I have played the game Twister, Ari, not with you, unfortunately, but I have.
Okay. Like when you have to spin the wheel and contort your body in order to get all of your body parts on the corresponding colors.
Ari, am I wrong?
That's what I picture in my head while you're like bouncing back and forth with your Texas takes every week. You want to hear the funniest part about it?
It's not about bouncing back and forth, Ari.
You are like contorting your body to make sure you like thread the needle of like whatever it is. The thing about it is that like I actually don't necessarily disagree with you this week. I think that Kansas might just be a pretty good team.
Yeah,
can
Kansas
score a
is
lot.
good. I think people still think Kansas is bad and that they're overvalued. Maybe they're slightly overvalued. I don't know that they're one of the 25 best teams.
They can score. That's Kansas, the thing that's scary with three score spreads is that if Jalon Daniels has a few plays, and I'm sure that he will, that they could win by 4. I think Texas could win by 14 or 13 and play a really good game. This isn't a Texas game against a Kansas team where they should win 56-0 and everything else is an embarrassment. They're playing a 4-0 team that has a really good quarterback and some really nice offensive pieces that can score points. So I think Texas is really good. I think they're going to win. I think they'll win comfortably, but I still think I'm taking the points here. Like I think that both of those things exist. Yeah,
I think if Texas doesn't cover, I'm not going to be like even lower on Texas. Now, if they've got,
I don't think it's possible that you are lower on Texas.
Again, all right, respect, just not trust. That's what I'm saying. But if Texas has to pull a rabbit out of their hat to win this game, I'm going to be more concerned. If they need a little Vince Young 4th and 5 action from Quinn, I'm going to be concerned because they're a better team than Kansas. But Kansas is also a team capable of beating you. So,
all right, Sam, center us. I remember yelling at you in Dallas at Big 12 Media Day about this. Have you changed your tune, or are you on like the David bus toward the road to nowhere leads to David's Texas take?
This is the game that tells me how seriously Texas is taking this year. Like, they've played with their food against Rice. They played with their food against Wyoming. They even messed around a little bit with those 2 muffed punts against Baylor, but Baylor was just so bad, and they did end up starting to put that game away by halftime. But This is a Kansas team that will have Texas' attention. This is not the Kansas team that came 2 years ago to Austin and won in overtime that made Texas a punchline when they beat them. This is a legitimately good Kansas team. Andy Kolnicki, the offense coordinator, I love what they do offensively. But one of the things that makes it work is the run game and being able to get the play action, be able to get the misdirection. And I just don't think I think they're going to have a hard time doing that against Texas. Dave talked about Texas defense not necessarily being dominant. One thing they are really good at right now is stopping the run. They're allowing only 2.7 yards per carry so far this year, which is more than a yard better than they were last year. They're really hard to deal with up front. Devondre Sweat and that defensive line has just been a load for opposing teams. And so I think they're going to beat Kansas up front in the run game and make them one-dimensional. And I think Texas is going to cover. I think this is a game where Texas is going to win by about 20. I would say like a 41-20-ish type of game. And I think this is a game where they finally start fast. That's one thing that's really hurt them offensively is they were so good in the first 2 years of the Sarkisian era of starting quick and then they would fade down the stretch. Now they're the other way. They're starting slow and they're finishing strong. I think this is the week that they finally put it together. JT Sanders, Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, Jonathan Brooks, these guys are all studs. I think they're going to finally put it together and put together a 4-quarter effort. I think they're going to pull this one by a comfortable margin.
Two things, guys.
Has Texas played a team that can run the ball?
I mean, they're supposed to play a team that could run the ball really well, and they played them on the road and shut them down.
Yeah, I was going to say Baylor's supposed to.
I was talking about Alabama. Weren't they supposed to be able to run the ball, or was their offensive line stink?
They got beat up front. Alabama got beat up front in that one.
I want to say two things
this time.
And I don't know why I keep getting.
Why do you have
my daughter's?
Why do you have balloons in your feet on your screen?
My daughter's second birthday tomorrow. Maybe that's it.
Awesome.
Guys, put up the peace sign on the screen and see if it happens to you.
Does it happen to me?
No.
Okay, I updated my software on my computer. I take exception to the notion that Texas doesn't have a offense that scares you. They have really, really good skill position players.
JT Sanders, maybe
the 1-2-3 punch in college football in terms of
simple questions for you, Ari. Who has the better quarterback in this game?
I don't know.
Jalen Daniels has played better.
Yeah.
But
Jalen Daniels is more exciting.
But if we were
defense that's scary and you're playing
Jalen Daniels has played better, but if we were drafting quarterbacks today, you would take
Buddy, you might be able to make that point against anybody. They could play Georgia tomorrow and you can make that point. It doesn't mean that makes any sense. He's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the entire sport, maybe. If they played Georgia tomorrow, could you be like, who has the better quarterback in this game?
Georgia's different because Georgia can overwhelm you on the lines.
Isn't that exactly what Texas has been doing all year?
Mm-hmm. That defense.
I don't know if are you watching the games?
I'm watching the games, but I'm just saying I don't think they overwhelm you in the same way. Like watching Georgia's defense the last couple years has been a different conversation than what we see in Texas. And again, I still think some of this Texas stuff is still because I don't respect Alabama as much as a lot of people do. Coming into the season, I was like,
but you keep changing your mind on why not to respect Texas every week. Every week
I respect them. I just
Alabama.
I don't trust them.
Okay, you don't have to trust them, but I also think that saying things that aren't right is not fair either. I do think that they have really good line play. They've got great skill position play, and Quinn Ewers had one big game on the road this year and did everything he was asked to do in a perfect way. And it might have been a master class of play calling in that game and a lot of easy completable passes that were dialed up in that game. But coaching and game plan is part of how good your team is. You can't get held. You don't get held against you. He played really well. So Jalon Daniels, I think, is one of the best, most entertaining quarterbacks in the sport. And really, if you think about the entire season this year, what unit is overwhelmingly good? The only thing that I think you might say is Washington's offense. But what other unit on any other team in college football is comparable to that Georgia defense that you were talking about?
I'm not talking about this year as much as just historically when you have teams that you trust. I'm saying this is why I don't necessarily trust them, is because I don't like if the offense had a day. I mean, they already had one, right? Where you have 10 points against one. The offense has a disastrous day. You're not going to say what's happening? It's just they just didn't have a good day. Like you watch those Alabama teams with Bryce Young or Tua, and you say, if you had 13 points in the fourth quarter against anybody, you'd be being like, if I entered an alternate dimension, right? Or if Texas gave up 45 to somebody that you didn't expect, like Kansas. If Kansas scores 40 on Texas, are you going to say, I can't believe, like, how is that possible?
I would be stunned by that. I would be stunned by that. 100%. Because again, I just think I think their defensive line is just too good. I think that's going to be a problem. If there's a path to an upset here, or there's a path to Kansas keeping this game close, I think it's Kansas defensive line getting some traction against Texas's front, because Kansas they portaled really well up there. They've done a really good job. Their defense actually seems to be pretty salty so far this year. They haven't been as much of a liability. And so if they're able to kind of do that and make it ugly, then I think there's a path for Kansas. But I just think the talent's going to make the difference. And I'm with Ari. I'm like, I don't want to measure Texas against Georgia's defense. That was a historically great defense. We're talking about just Texas winning. We're just talking about Texas winning the Big 12.
Dave, while you're at it, we're not trying. Thought about whether or not Texas's offense was better than Kurt Warner, Texas, or the best show on turf. You ever thought about their defense is better than the 2000 Ravens?
I'm trying to tell you why I don't necessarily trust them, and that is why, because neither side of the ball is like Dave, God tier.
I'm going to simplify it for you, and then we're going to move on.
All right.
You don't trust them because they used to lose shitty games.
That's a little bit of it, Ari.
That's all it is.
100%.
That's all it is. Hey, but Sam, you were not on the train with me before the season started. You were like, Texas is going to nod off a bad game or two. We argued about this. Have you changed your thought process, or are you more in line with what Dave is?
I'm starting to get more into, and part of it too is that the Big 12 just looks a lot weaker than I thought it was going to be. 4 weeks in. I just, to me, they're the clear favorite. And could they have a hiccup? Yes, but I can't see more than one of them coming the rest of the way. And it's just, it could happen. But I'm more in the camp that I think they're going to win the Big 12, and and I'm getting closer. And this is a game that can sell me if they go in there and handle business. This is a game that can sell me on Texas going to the playoff. Look at Ari's loving it.